Thank you for listening to the Following Films podcast. As you can probably tell right away from the sound of my voice, I'm sick. I have bronchitis. So I'm going to make this extra short today, the intro. Today I'm joined by Alan Rudolph. I had him on the show today to talk about his adaptation of Breakfast of Champions. The film has recently been re-released in 4K, and it's definitely a film that's worthy of reevaluation. Breakfast of Champions will be playing on November 15th at the Alamo Drafthouse in Los Angeles and at the Gene Siskel Film Center in Chicago, Illinois on December 13th. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. Hey, Alan, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm new to Zoom, and I've been accused of Zooming with the camera all my life, but virgin. And I think I'm going back to the monastery after this.
Not for you? Not a fan of it?
Well, I live a rather simple life, and I like it that way. There's only one person I really want to see every day, and I do, and that's her.
There you go.
The world out there reminds me too much of the world outside of Breakfast of Champions.
It's, having watched the film, rewatched it last night, I was struck immediately by how much more relevant it has become in the last 25 years. When Vonnegut wrote this in 1973, and then when it was adapted, it's just my favorite satires are ones that become more and more grounded as time goes on. You look at Strangelove or Network or any of these types of films, and it feels like they were absurd at the time. But then as you get more distance, they become more and more grounded in reality. And
you're my favorite guy right
now. And yeah, I just talk a little bit about being ahead of the curve with this one.
I thought it was a noose. This is actually my 50th year with this film. When it came out, the book, I was working with Altman. We had just finished Nashville, and MASH mean he didn't have to hitchhike on the highway, and he was being sent anything and everything at the time, and he knew I'd worked on Long Goodbye and California Split, and he knew I wanted to make my own films, which was an impossibility at the time because there was no. I wanted to make European art films in America. Nobody cared about that. And he said, I'll get you a film made in 3 years after Nashville. But he said, because I did more on Nashville than I think I've done on some of my own films. And it was an experience that we all knew was life-changing for everybody, except Bob. It was just more Altman. Yeah. And he said, I need you to write a few things first. So he gave me this thing about 8 pages long, which was, I'm exaggerating, but not much more than maybe 40, which was Indians, a play by Arthur Kopit that had been on Broadway. And he said, see if you can crack this. I've been offered it. I'm going to see if I can make a movie out. And then right in the middle of talking about it, he said, but read this book first, Breakfast of Champions. It just came out and it was brought to him. And he had writers working on it, and nobody could crack it. He had, I think, a pair of writers, and he had an earlier writer, and nobody could figure out how to make a movie out of it. And ignorance is bliss. And I read it, and I said to him, and I was just a long-haired, I had hair, just a guy, I was barely 30, but I'd work with Bob, and we had some kind of connection. And I said, look, it's like, for me personally, then during that war, in that culture, it was like rock and roll or LSD. There's life before Breakfast of Champions and life after Breakfast of
For
Champions.
sure. Yes.
And it coalesced and reinforced everything I'd thought about the absurdity of the world in general, and certainly American culture and politics and habits. And I said, but to make them write this book, translate this, adapt this in some way. And I thought Buffalo Bill was hard because that was basically like an E.E. Cummings poem, And I said, but you'd have to really make it a biography of Vonnegut, or part biography, because it's not only is he the author, he's a character in it.
He's the voice of it. He gives you so much. And absolutely.
I haven't read the book in decades, but I think he even said it was a 50th birthday present to himself. And his alter ego, his fictional alter ego is there with Kilgore Trout.
Yeah.
His alias is there. And so I said, I don't know if I can handle that. And he said, I don't want that. His only instructions to me, the same way his only instructions to me when I finally made Welcome to LA that he produced, what he said in Welcome to LA was, I don't care what you do, just don't make a car chase movie. His instructions to me about Breakfast of Champions was just don't follow the book. And I don't know where it came from, but I said, I'd like to just write about the characters and try and make a story out of that. And that's what I did. Then I met Vonnegut. I flew to New York to meet Vonnegut after I had written the script. And he said, basically, just don't follow the book. He said a film and a book are separate entities, Even if they come from one source, they should live independently of each other. And if you're inspired by the book, or if it's your starting point, that's all you need. The rest of it, don't worry about following the book. And I think he approved the screenplay because it didn't follow the book. And then they couldn't get it made somehow. And Bob probably went off on Buffalo Bill, and then he was going to do Ragtime. His whole life got cluttered. Yeah. And he did ask me, who do I want to be in it then? That was his first question about any film, whether it was written or not. He would lie down on his couch and say, who do we put in this? Even without a script.
Yeah.
And I said, Johnny Carson as Dwayne Hoover. And I could see that little light bulb in Bob.
That's great. That is perfect.
And after that moment, it was his idea. And Carson, I think, was famous for not wanting to be in movies. But he kind of flirted with it for a while before not being interested. I think Altman got him there. But in any case, as I started making films, and I realized, I'm going to have to get paid one of these days, or I don't have a house. We were living in a guest house that's the size of your room right there. I wrote many a screenplay in that little room, and standing up because there was no desk. And so I took some work for money, such as it was, and then I'd option Breakfast of Champions, which was expensive. I think I had the option for about 3 years, but never consecutively. I couldn't afford that. And you realize, geez, guys like Vonnegut never have to work again. I mean,
people just keep optioning it and never making it.
It was always optioned, always. Yeah. And you're a journalist, find out who optioned it. I've been told that there's some mighty famous people who've tried to crack it over the years. I think it was like Confederacy of the Dunces or something. It was like a trinket to have. I've optioned. I'll be making right after I do Catcher in the Rye. And I wanted to make the movie. I asked Bob, "Are you ever interested in making this?" He said, "No." And I think after that, he was at the time. But at the time, the war was Vietnam. There was a lot of juice there that could apply to that moment.
Sure.
then I'm just giving you how this movie got made.
I love it. No, this is great. Keep going, please.
And then it's funny, Albert Finney and I had a discussion once. We never knew what the year of anything was, but we could apply it to what we were working on at the time. And so in 1990, I think it was, I, at the last moment, was hired to direct a film that had a lot of problems, a low-budget film, but it starred Demi Moore and Bruce Willis and Harvey Keitel and Glenn Headley. And the script was sent me. It was one of those murder mysteries, and it didn't have an end. I mean, they didn't send me the end. And they needed to go now. It was in such trouble. And I thought, ooh, I'll be able to option Breakfast of Champions again. And so Elliot Davis, the cameraman who shot Breakfast, and I went to New York and New Jersey and shot this little film, and it was a great experience. And I'm just an exponent of the Altman years. And Altman changed the face and the ear of filmmaking.
Without question. Yeah.
And the approach to it and the technique of it. The 5 years I worked with him as an assistant director, and then the years after that or as a writer director, we changed how movies were made in Hollywood. I mean, nobody could figure out how do we make these low budget movies professionally with named people outside the system, and no one could stop us. And so when I got to Mortal Thoughts and Bruce Willis and Demi Moore, who were both fantastic, I mean, forget anything you've heard. They were just wonderful.
Yeah.
And Demi, especially on that, she was in, I think, almost every scene, and she produced it, and she was great, co-produced. I brought this way of making films that to me was the only thing I knew, but to them was what we can explore, we can change things. And because of that, the way that project, I inherited it, you'd get to a set and it would be terrible. I'd say, well, we can't shoot here. So you'd invent a scene outside while we're repainting the set, And Bruce really leaned into it and just loved it. And he said, he was very public about it after that. That was his favorite character, his favorite experience. It was a short experience, but he was doing those big meteoroid movies. And so now we're dissolved, as they say. I did not have the rights to Breakfast of Champions. I got a call, and I think it was 97 in the winter. And it was Bruce, and I hadn't had much contact with him. And I said, "Oh, how you doing?" and all that. And he said, "Listen, I want to make a comedy in my life right now." And he said, "I optioned Breakfast of Champions. I laughed my ass off at the book, and I read your screenplay, and I laughed some more. I can get you a small amount of money if we can do it like we did, and no interference. But let's go. How quickly can you mount this? Can you?" And we were shooting a few months later. You don't get those calls.
No.
Right? And then we made it. It's exactly, we went after every first choice of casting, got a superior cast. Pam Dixon was our casting then. And Bruce, I think, was emotionally moved by the amount of people we were getting. He said, "Who do we get to play Kilgore?" I said, "That's the first casting we have to do." And he said, "Who do you have in mind?" I said, "I'd like to go after the best actor I can think of, whom I don't know, is Albert Finney." And he just thought, he said, "Do you think we could get Albert Finney to be in this movie for these prices?" I said, "There's only one way to find out." And then I got a call from Nick, who I'd just finished working with on Afterglow with Julie Christie that I produced. That was my film before this. And he said, and I'd sent him the script for Breakfast of Champions right after we finished Afterglow. I said, I don't own this, but you might want to read it. Never heard back from him. So now here we are about a year and a half later or something, and Bruce is going to play Dwayne Hoover. And Nick calls me up I send it to him again for Harry LeSabre, the cross-dressing general manager of Exit 11 Motor Village. And he calls me, why the hell didn't you ask me to play Dwayne Hoover? I said, well, I did. You didn't answer. You didn't respond. He said, wow, you're supposed to come after me. I said, well, I did. I gave you the script. That's as after you as I can do it. And I said, doesn't matter. If you play Harry LeSabre, you'll probably steal the movie anyway. And he dove in the whole way.
He's so damn good in it. He's so damn good in the movie.
That's one of the best performances. You're unhinged, as they say, but there isn't a crevice he didn't get into in this character.
No, I mean, he goes as broad and big as you can go, but he puts everything internal, external. And so it feels like a very honest portrayal of this individual, because it feels like he is truly just expressing himself outwardly, the kind of thoughts that we all have in the back of our minds, which is, I think, the kind of magic trick of this film and the adaptation. Is so much of this is the internal being externalized, which makes it absurd but honest at the same time, if that makes sense.
Well, boy, you're my new hero. I think you can say that about all the actors. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
Bruce's character, if you didn't know who he was, or if he wasn't famous for, at the time, action movies or whatever they were, you'd say, who is this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, I hadn't thought of it, but in a way, he is Johnny Carson, unraveling.
Yeah.
I mean, he has this image. Before the picture we started shooting, Bruce and I, poor Bruce. I don't say that. He's just moving into a new phase, I suppose. I haven't had any contact with him for since right after the movie, maybe a year or two. We were talking about something else, another movie. But he gave everything he had for this guy. He knew he's a real artist, Bruce, and he has great taste, great wit. He's as literary as anybody you'll ever meet. He's read everything, literate. And he's literary because he's a pretty good writer too. And he's made his choices and he's happy with them, I guess, or whatever. But this was his chance to do something totally different. He did it before a little bit in other movies, and people kind of resent. It's like they control you. The critics gave us both barrels, point blank, no mercy. I read one review, and that was enough for a lifetime. And such venom and vitriol, and they got personal about everything, and they hated this movie. It was almost as if they were afraid of it at the time. And there was no internet, there was no. So the mighty critics were the future of your film life. And if I had had a career, it would have been a career killer. But as my friend Tom Robbins said, you don't have a career, you have a careen. And I thought it was the best thing I'd done. And I was so proud of it. And it was like something radioactive just sitting there that they couldn't wait for it to be hauled off and put on some underneath the sea forever. And that's where it's at. And nobody could see it. I got my only copy of it prior to now, and I hope I get it in 4K, is I got it at Warehouse Records the day they were going out of business, their last day. I found it in the 99-cent bin, DVD of it, which I think wrong format, bad color, and 20 minutes that you couldn't fast forward of movies that you'd never heard of starring named people. So, oh, there's a Liam Neeson movie I never. Oh, there's a Sandra Bullock movie. There, I mean, a Sandra Bullock. Oh, there's an Antonio Banderas movie. Never heard of any of them. And obviously, we were in that extremely rare group. And I kept trying to get to the movie, and then it starts. The last time I saw it in its entirety, except for timing it, but that was a reel at a time for the 4K. Then it starts. It's ugly and, but after about 30 seconds, I start laughing as if I was a stranger to my own paradise. And I thought it was hilarious, just hilarious. And I thought, well, that should get you a few points
Yeah.
for openers, but no. People, they said, this is an impossible book to adapt, and you didn't stick to the book, which each can be true, but not together. And
good adaptations capture the essence and heart of something, the feeling that you get from it, not the word by word translation, because it's a wildly different medium. My favorite adaptations are ones that give me a similar feeling. And I had a similar feeling reading the book and watching the film with this one. I think this is one of the better adaptations when you think of it through that lens. If you let go of the movie or let go of the book and allow the movie to exist on its own terms, it's a good movie. This is a movie that deserves reevaluation because I think people dismissed it way too easily at the time.
Well, I don't know if they weren't ready for it. I thought people were aware that we were being lied to, even though times were theoretically good. And that was the point of it, is that advertising was the tip of the poison spear. Yep. And don't believe yourself, believe our version of yourself. Yes. And you'll drink this and stay young and wear these and buy this car and you'll be important. And you can trust me. And when I told Bruce ahead of time, I said, here's my take on this guy. He is every politician who's ever run for every office. He'll skirt around the truth. He'll never tell you the truth. He's enamored of his own success, his name value, the people shaking his hand, his good looks, or whatever it is, his climb to the top of the success syndrome of America. But not one moment is spent on self-realization or enlightenment or analysis or
yep.
And no questioning of what got him there. And that's the story, is really, then suddenly something bubbles up, a question mark inside of a guy who can't handle it, who is not prepared. There's no self understanding. So he does what Americans do. He denies it's there at first. Then as he gets beat over the head with the truth of things in his life, he looks to others to answer it for him.
Yeah.
And of course, the guy he picks is the one who's spouting nonsense, they all say, who says it's chaos out there. But he also says, which is a line that's original to the book, to the script, not the book, it's not in the book, is until you're dead, it's all life.
Yeah.
So parenthetically, live it to your truest. And he can't even do that. He misinterprets the message.
Well, there's this idea in the film that I hadn't thought of the first time I watched it. It was this on the rewatch, where it was kind of this idea of the public persona of Bruce Willis is sort of, to me, the outside world viewing this character, this action hero stepping into this role. And he has no ability to express himself as he truly is because there's a persona that people expect of him. And there's this thing that needs to get out that he has no idea how to deal with. And the society around him, when he starts doing that, starts crumbling. And this is really just a reflection of his interior, everything that we're seeing around him. He is the creator of this universe that he exists in. We are all the creator of our own universe that we exist in with everybody. At least to me, that's how I see this. And I just thought it was a really beautiful examination of that, because we all have a public persona, a side of ourselves that we put out into the world that is not an honest reflection, especially with social media and these other things like that, that I think this is, at this point in time, a really a far more salient film now than it was 20 years ago.
Well, 25, if
25, yeah.
to be exact.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, because Bruce, I think, not only was aware of that, maybe that's what drew him to it. I'm not so sure. And it's the place inside the individual that confrontation happens that is really a dynamic that's worth pursuing. And you don't get the opportunity to pursue it in a fictional character. And yet maybe the artist who's portraying that character is also living it. And at the time, I think he and Demi were having a amicable split. So he was going through quite a few things, and it never affected his behavior. I mean, he never brought any of that into it publicly or even privately. He just used it, as they say, and it was heartbreaking when nobody cared about the movie. And now, okay, so now we have the social media. Now everyone's a legend in their own room, and now it's interesting in a certain way. Somebody's opinion on some platform might be worth more than the people vying for the highest office in the world. It's just, sure. It's madness because our filters are all gone. It's all feeding me. Now, give me something. I'm famous, TikTok, me. And I have to be important because people are listening to me. Don't I, Dwayne? I mean, you're the most famous man in town. People know who you are. And he says, who am I? and now they'll come and see it, and maybe, with it is chaos out there. Yes. If I had, okay, so I've suffered. Slings and arrows would be fun compared to. I mean, they went nuclear on me, and it's a good thing I wasn't trying to be a player in Hollywood, because I would have played my last game. And this film was made entirely outside of Hollywood, at least by my boundaries. Nobody ever talked. I never met a studio person on the whole experience. And yet now, what does this mean? This is at the crux of a question I've been asking myself from the beginning of making films, my film. The films don't change. They haven't changed one frame. So how can the people who are so sure that this is proper to annihilate and reject because it doesn't reflect their view of the world, and now you say perhaps it was prescient or whatever, maybe a little more relevant now because the world out there seems to resemble this.
Yeah.
Our leading man even has bad hair. And so I know it's a defensive measure because I've been under attack since my first film, but it's like, shouldn't it be by law, unwritten law anyway, that critics have to say, this is my opinion, and instead of trying to tell us what the world is and what this isn't. I wanted from the very beginning to show, but I thought it was displayed on every one of the films I made, almost every one. This is a fable. I'm not trying to show you reality. First of all, it's impossible. No. Second of all, I give you no references from your real life. And what did I get for it was people don't talk like this. People don't act like that. I'm not talking about Breakfast, although I got it in spades for that. Every film I've ever made. Where is this supposed to be? What time is this supposed to take place? Why is this different? Why do they do things that aren't normal? Beats me. It's because it's a movie.
Yeah. It's not reality. It's supposed to be heightened. You don't go there to watch a video camera that's put on people. It's not voyeurism. You're being told a tale. It's to me, it's films are the lie that tell the truth. So that's really how it should be told. And for me, I can take a lesson when somebody's not on a soapbox, when wants to express an idea, a thought, and there's a little bit of, nuance to how they're doing it and a little bit of room for interpretation and the ability to place yourself in the shoes of the characters. I think that's super important and very helpful. And if you make it so that it's utterly grounded in reality, it's going to be boring as shit.
No, it's never going to be. It's there's just different ways of doing it. Mine requires you to make an emotional investment
Sure.
as a member of the audience. The emotional truths of the movie are what you can trust. That and music. Audiences always trust music. That's why it's the great manipulator. But the character's emotional journey is what you're supposed to bring yourself to. And I've tried in all sorts of films to show you a surface that you don't recognize, not in science fiction way, but just in everyday way. You can't recognize it as the one you rely on with the ads of products, and all of this. You have to find your place in it. And people didn't want to do that. It's funny, all the things I got accused of early on are the things that if I was active now, I could sell movies on. They were too different then. They were too weird. They were too strange. You didn't know what was going to happen next. Now I don't think you can get a movie made. I haven't tried for decades, but you couldn't get a movie made if it wasn't strange or weird or different. And probably, I've never been to one of those pitch things, but probably it's, people hear all the time, well, go further. It's not strange enough, and I think the difference is they don't like my version of strange, or they didn't then, because violence wasn't the key to it. And it's a pretty lonely little island when from the beginning. I mean, I've dealt with it. I'm not fascinated by violence, and certainly not violence as entertainment, but I've dealt with it. On that Mortal Thoughts, which I didn't write, has a very violent moment in it. And I decided after that I was never going to do that again. But
there's enough people doing it. You don't need to add anything to the violence that we got.
I used to say this a lot. Hollywood has spent, probably now the price goes up, maybe $1 trillion perfecting how to kill people on screen, and maybe 30 cents on how to enlighten people and how to show them exploration. It just doesn't happen. And I have no issues with any of it. If this is what the people want, we're going to get it. And if we get it, these are bye-bye Blue Monday, because what people don't get, especially the last several decades, these are supposed to be the good times.
Yeah.
These are the times when we could actually do things. Now, it is all like On the Beach. Remember that novel?
Yes.
On the Beach and movie. We know that it's coming and it's going to be over. If I could pick a time in my 50 years to show this particular movie at any time, it would be exactly when it opens up at the Alamo Draft House in New York City 3 days before the election.
It's perfect timing for it.
2021. Plus, I've never been to an Alamo Draft House. I'm going back. I'm looking forward to it. You can get any booze you want. The food's supposed to be pretty good. And
it's not bad.
They put you on reclining seats. So all they have to do after our movie is just wheel you out.
I think that there is an audience that is your film's going to get reevaluated and it's going to be reappreciated with Shout putting it out there. Just having Shout's name behind it is going to be something that gets other people that haven't heard of the film will look at it for the first time. You have to keep in mind there's 25 years of people since this was originally released that have not seen your film, that have no idea that, if they started watching movies 5 years after, this one is one that probably passed them by. They're not even aware of.
My problem is the way people view films now. coming to a shower head near you or to your belt buckle or something, but I'll take it if they see it. It's not like this is a downhill excursion now. We are opening up against the World Series in New York, Halloween, the marathon running the second day,
yeah.
and the election in 2 days. So maybe Ron Mann, who's releasing it theatrically, who is on my Mount Rushmore now, he knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's still climbing that tall mountain. And Shout Factory, who will get it out to what is now probably the true public, who watch it on streaming, are doing it, just doing the film proud, because I'm very proud of the film. But the theatrical experience at the Alamo, have you? Where are you right now?
I'm in Tucson, Arizona, so it's not coming here, to the best of my knowledge.
No. Well, Ron, he had a list, films we like as his company, of where he's booked it. It's a night here, a night there, 2 weeks somewhere, a week somewhere. I'll take it. But I just thought it was funny, okay, New York, the Yankees-Dodgers World Series against our Friday night and Saturday night screenings. Okay, fine, that's it. And the people who show up really are looking for an answer, maybe.
Well, it's the problem that we have with our society, and I know we're over time, and I'll let you go in just a second, but that I have with our modern culture is the algorithm that gives us and feeds us everything that we will like. It feeds us music that we supposedly will like. It feeds us the next TV show, the next movie. Some of the things I love the most are things that weren't made for me, that nobody would have ever recommended to me, that I just came across because it was there, because there were 3 channels, basic cable. I'm going to a video store. I'm 48 years old. In 1986, I was looking back at, I think I saw 45 movies, something like that, in the theater that year. It was just, that's how the culture was at that point in time. And I saw a bunch of things that weren't made for me. And I think I have better taste because of it.
Well, yeah, because you exercised your own free will and you had your own, you pursued it at your, with your questioning culture and society. You felt you will make those choices. You didn't want those choices made for you. And Altman used to always say, why do people go to see things they've already seen? You would think they want to see films they've never seen before. And yet he also would say there was never a New York cop who didn't learn how to behave as a New York cop without watching movies. That's where they got the personality and maybe the performance of a police. But I was like you. I mean, I've never streamed. I don't know how to stream. I haven't been able to watch Breakfast other than when we timed it, but it was a reel at a time on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to hook that up to the monitor behind me and watch it. I'll figure it out someday, or someone will. But that's why I love DVD. Oh, even though my player is rickety.
Oh, I keep the dead medium going. I still buy 4Ks every week.
But you say the algorithms. I don't even know what that means, but it should be go rhythm yourself. But if they keep feeding you what they think you want and who they think you are, they being AI or whoever does these things, then you're just going to get more of the same. And every now and then, maybe, but I like the one I have originally better, or whatever it is.
Sure.
I get a little of that with music because I have a very specific demand in music. And sometimes you say, you might like this too. And so, oh, geez, if I could get more of this, and they're all just washed up, rounded off versions of what the real reason I
Yeah.
like the original, I learned not to trust those things.
Well,
So,
it's what was the thing that it will never be able to figure out what was the thing that resonated with you about the thing that you like. It can't figure that out. It can try to say it has all these things in common, but it doesn't know that there was a specific film that you liked for a really weirdly specific reason. When there's lines in certain movies that I'll see that they just jump out and they just crawl into the back of my DNA and they stick there. I don't know why. It just resonates in a certain way. And when you have a conversation with somebody and engage with somebody, you say, this thing is what I really liked about this, then somebody who knows about film or music or whatever, they can recommend other things to you and push you down a path that's not necessarily the obvious answer to it. Because I wouldn't put your film Breakfast of Champions necessarily say like it's Terry Gilliam's Brazil, but in my mind, the way that they react to him, they actually feel very similar to me.
well, when did Brazil come out?
1984, something like that. I think 5, maybe earlier. I can't remember.
I don't know. I of course saw it. I thought it was genius. I loved it. And the way it works is, I'm sure something in Brazil translated through me to get to Breakfast of Champions too. I mean, that's how it is.
Sure.
And you can't define it, otherwise it doesn't exist. If you have the answer to everything, you're asking the wrong questions. There's a mystery to this, to all of it. And it's the mystery. If you can capture, rub shoulders truly with some of the mystery of the process, of the content, of the human experience of it, whether it's a film, it's usually art leads the way.
Yeah.
Then you've reached the peak. You've actually got something out of it that you can't describe or define. And to me, that's the whole point. There are no answers to the biggest mysteries, and we each have a little bit of that advertising, social media is trying to rip out of you, because they have algorithms to replace it, and it's so much easier, and you get to act smarter until you need to rely on the truth, and you ain't going to find it. and it's just the way it is, and so it goes.
I think we need our society would be a lot better with a little more self-reflection and boredom. Those are very important key components of life that I think we're sadly lacking now.
Well, I guess I've never been bored.
It's because you haven't engaged with the constant entertainment stream that we have at this time.
I don't believe it's entertainment. I believe it's, in the aggregate has become manipulation and control. It's broken up into little entertainment bubbles or pixels or whatever it is, and some people can just dive in. But I think a new generation of people will find themselves in rebellion against all.
I agree.
And it's the same way people want to play vinyl records now, because maybe they'll find a simpler way to explore and to express. But I don't know. None of it makes sense, and it all makes sense when you look at it outside of your subjectivity and objectivity would keep us here for a year talking about it, and all we'd get is nothing out of it. But
and I apologize for that, because it's something I'm endlessly fascinated by. Though it's just, even though I know there's no true answers to it, it's worth exploring. It's worth spending time in those places for me personally.
I didn't know what they were. I didn't have an intellectual upbringing. I had a great upbringing. Movies was our whole life. And I was born and became aware of things before television. I remember as a kid, I was maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. I've been to a lot of movies. Mm-hmm. Television came in. Oh my goodness. And my dad, who was great, would take us to the best movies. And people say, oh, you seem to be influenced by noir movies. Well, there was no label for them then, but Dad would take us to all these movies. And it's gradually what stuck with me as I got older was the idea, the alchemy, that the surface of noir movies, which were admittedly my favorite, made it seem, the thing that made it seem real, and more real than other movies, Hollywood movies, which you knew were fake going in, but you still were captured by them, was the artificiality of the surface. The longer the shadows, the harsher the light, the more the way people moved and dressed, all the artificial trappings of these things made them seem more accurate and more real. I, unfortunately, because I have an absurdist look at things, I went for the fact that they were fake. I just thought that was the greatest thing about it, is that, oh, wait, the things that are the least true, the least realistic, make this seem more realistic. I have no idea why, but I think it has to do with, not unlike Kilgore going into the mirror. I have the feeling that it's coming to terms with artificiality and allows you to, if you know that it could be a door to reality somehow, as opposed to what's presented as reality. Hard reality, you can't deny. It hurts, it's there, people suffer. But there will always be your subjectivity to that hard reality, whether you want it to be or not. I mean, it's always going to be part of the discussion. Oh, that poor guy got hit by a truck, but I'm here, what's for dinner? You know, I mean, it's just always going to be that.
Yeah.
And the more people suffer, the greater the numbers of people suffering, the more it might include every one of us, and we might get the joke too late. But that's what always, that seems to be the joke of humanity. We always get the punchline too late because people warn us, but we don't listen.
Well, it's and to circle back and kind of wrap things up, I think that ties in beautifully to you touched on something before, which is something I've always said about Vonnegut's work, is that the work is the same. Words are written, they're on a page, same cover. Every time I pick up that book, you know, it might be 10 years in between, it changes every single time. It's because I've changed. And it's because the art is the way that it hits you. You can see it at one day, it might be a tragedy. The next day, it's just a flat out comedy. You know, and they could be two different films, two different books that right next to each other, depending on the experiences that you bring to it and the way that you shadow the experience of that. And, you know, I'm so thrilled that I got to re-experience this one because I had a great time with it. And yeah, congratulations on this one, Alan.
I'm so happy. Thanks for having me, and see you uphill.
Thanks, man. This was great. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Get some phone ring lit up on a nice night. I gotta say you got a cheese grater, boys. Acting like I meant to hurt, screaming like I meant to hurt. But bitch, I don't work for you anymore. Bitch, I don't work for you anymore. And it's hot inside of the sun. I could put you there, and it's hot inside of the sun. I would put you there. And it's hot inside of the sun. I would put you there. And it's hot inside of the sun, I would put you there.